All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to this morning's Helpline session with your hosts, James McDonald and Craig Proctor.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. And I'd like to start by welcoming our participants to our Helpline session here this morning. And as you know, this is our free-for-all. We can talk about anything you want to. We'll open up anybody's mic who has a question or wants to discuss any element of the system, or you can type into the chat anything that you'd like us to discuss. It doesn't matter whether it relates to lead generation, lead conversion, USPs, setting up systems, hiring and training. Sky's the limit. You determine what it is that we discuss here. Now, we did some great webinars last week, including and perhaps especially for a lot of you that are brand new starting from the San Francisco Super Conference. We did a great ad clinic session on Friday, and I say that because we really focused on looking at successful ads, not just online, but in print as well. Really covered the gamut of how you can generate leads inexpensively and automatically, and what you might want to look at doing first, second, third, and so on. And the importance of making sure that you're in regular communication with your coach so that you're not doing something incorrectly for a long, long period of time to determine whether it works or not. That was something that was really stressed on Friday, is that the benefit of direct response is that we know quickly whether something is successful or it isn't, so that we're able to either get rid of it or fix it. Whereas, you know, what the mistake some of you will make is you'll do something for weeks or months on end only to determine, yep, that didn't work. It's completely unnecessary. So that was something that I really wanted to stress leading into this week. You know, obviously we've got Thanksgiving coming up here in the U.S., so this will be our webinar this week to really make sure that we get all your questions answered. So I do want to encourage you, and we've got Craig with us and Andrea to make sure that we get to absolutely everybody on today's webinar. So first of all, good morning to you, Craig, and to Andrea, and I guess we ought to get started.
All right, let's do it. Yes, happy Monday morning. We'll take as many questions as we can today. You can type your question into the chat box, or you can ask us an audio question. So, Andrea, let's start, I suppose, with some chat questions here.
And by the way, while you're doing that, while everyone's considering what they want to talk about, what their question is, let me just remind everybody that you'll notice that the upcoming boot camp in Cisco is coming up on the 15th of January. We'd like to know that you're coming, so you can very easily click on reserve your seat now and let us know that you will be attending. And we're going to have a great turnout, and it's an awesome day, mid-January, to spend an entire day working on your business, and you really do want to be there. So for all of you, particularly all of you that are brand new from the San Francisco Super Conference, you definitely want to be there. Let us know that you're coming, and we'll have an awesome day together. And remember, no one's selling you anything. Only coaching members are there, so it's really advanced training, and everybody really raves about the day, and it'll really jumpstart your 2016. So we're looking forward to that.
Well, James, since you just came back from doing a super conference last week in Huntington Beach, why don't you just boot camp, rather? Why don't you talk a little bit about what you did, what you accomplished at that boot camp?
Well, first of all, this is what is best about the boot camps, is that in an uninterrupted environment, that means in a classroom, all of you know that is the most conducive environment for absorbing information so that you understand it. And of course, we also have the luxury of time. We've got an entire day, a 10-hour day where we can focus working on your business. So showing you is very powerful when we're all in a room together. Lead generation. We can actually look at and analyze all of the different lead generators. Specifically, go onto the website, show you the different direct mail postcards, different print advertisements, the different online sources. All of these things we can look at in great detail. We can talk about lead conversion in great detail, demonstrate the buyer and listing presentation. Having you in that environment, what it does more than anything else is it connects the dots. And I think the old adage that the chain is as strong as the weakest link is really appropriate here. Because if you understand, the majority of what you're doing, but there are little links that are vague or misunderstood or completely ignored for that matter, filling those links in is going to bring this whole thing together for you, and that's what's going to allow you to make the quantum leap. So at the boot camp, that's exactly what we're able to do. And overwhelmingly, the familiar refrain is, now I really get it. I get all the little details of how everything fits together and the pieces that I was missing in that puzzle. So, yeah, again, I can't recommend it enough. And for those of you, by the way, that were in Huntington Beach last week, you pipe it in the chat and give your feedback, and we'll read it out and encourage those up in the Bay Area to make sure they come in January.
All right, James, I don't know if you're on hands-free. It sounds kind of echoey, but it sounds like you're, no? Okay.
No, I'm on my headset. Funny,
you know,
on Friday, I didn't have my headset. On Friday, I was just talking into my computer, and no one mentioned anything. And today, I'm on my headset, and I don't sound very good.
Okay. All right, well, let's go to the chat questions. Here's a question from Bertrand. Hi, Craig and James. Do you have a checklist of things to do with listings each week, each month? Yeah, that's called an activity plan. So you all should have an activity plan, right? What you want to do is sit down with yourself and write out exactly what should happen every time you list a home. So, for example, on day 0, okay, today, if I list a house, here's what I know is going to happen. I know that I need to broker load the listing into MLS. I know I need to call the sign company to order up a for sale sign. I need to take a picture of the house. I need to make feature sheets. I need to get the key cut and the lockbox installed. There's many things I need to do. Okay, I need to call them at least every week. Well, see, the important thing is everything I just mentioned there, a lot of it actually doesn't depend on you. Someone needs to take care of these activities, but the first thing that you all need to do is you need to create a listing plan, an activity plan of all the things that should happen every time you list a home or every time you sign a buyer to a buyer agency agreement. I mean, it's not like you don't know what should happen. In a perfect world, you know what should happen. The problem is you don't always remember to do it, okay? Or certain things happen out of certain order. So if you take a look at all the things I just mentioned, what really needs to be done by me? Do I need to physically broker load into MLS? I don't need to do that. I can get my assistant to do that. If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant at this point. I don't have to be the one to take the picture. You know, there used to be a time I thought I was the only one that could take a picture of a home. Nonsense. Okay, I don't need to be the one getting the key cut or installing the lockbox. So a lot of what needs to be done should be delegated eventually. I mean, right now, if there's only you, well, then you're running around doing the $8 to $10 an hour work. But as I stated at the super conference, if you want to make the big bucks in real estate, if you want to make $300, $400, $500 an hour, you can't be running around being involved in these $8 to $10 hour activities. You just can't be doing it. Because every time you do that, you're telling the world I'm worth $8 an hour. Many of you would say, well, I can't afford an assistant. I look at it differently. You can't afford not to. Okay, so we talk about time management. You cannot manage time. All you can manage are your activities. So you should be very careful in how you spend your time. That's why I asked all of you when you got back from the super conference to write down what you do all day long and to challenge yourself. I said the pathway to freedom is not becoming an expert at what you do. The pathway to freedom is becoming an expert at what you don't do. Too many of you are consumed by work and you're doing the wrong kind of work. So yes, Bertrand, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think all of you know what you should do, what should happen when you get a listing. What should happen when you sign a buyer to a buyer agency agreement. Once the property goes under contract, what should happen? You should have a activity plan after the home is sold or the conditions are removed between then and the closing date. It's not like you guys don't know what should happen. It's just it doesn't happen, or you certainly don't make it easy on yourselves, because if you don't have an activity plan, here's what happened to me. I had to get up every day like it was my first day in real estate and try to remember all the stuff that I already knew. Now, that might not be too bad for you if you've only got 1 or 2 listings, but you didn't join this program to carry 1 or 2 listings. The natural thing that's going to happen in this program is your business is going to start to grow. So imagine if you have 10 listings, 20 listings, 50 listings, over 100 listings at any given time like I had. It's very difficult to manage that without systems. So the system manages the people, okay, and you manage the system.
Craig, we talked about this a great deal at the boot camp, and what we analyzed with a lot of our members, particularly when they were just starting off with the system, is so much of this topic depends on lead generation. And here's what I mean by that. If doing the $12 to $15 an hour activities don't interfere with you doing the $500 activities, then I guess you don't need any help right now. But as soon as doing the $12 to $15 an hour activities interferes or stops you from doing the $500 an hour activities, then you know that what you're doing is you're giving priority to lower dollar productive activities. And so much of this relates to lead generation. As soon as you start generating 2, 3, 4, 5 leads every day, the act of following up with those prospects, ultimately converting them into clients, that is all $500 an hour work. The more leads you generate, the more your time has to be dedicated and priority has to be given to that $500 an hour work, thus making it impossible for you to do all of the $12 an hour work that's associated with all that lead generation. So that seems to be the point in time with this system where you know that you can find somebody who doesn't have a real estate license, who maybe they start off as part-time, but you're going to offload all of the $12, $15 an hour activity to them because you know that what has to take priority is the $500 an hour work, primarily lead conversion with the marketing that you're doing.
Well, James, I'd say one of the big benefits of being part of the coaching program, being part of this program, is you're really going to eventually change the way you think about things, and you'll change what you're prepared to do. I mean, we really want you guys to elevate your level here. You can't make the kind of money you want to make continuing to do what you're doing. That's really the point. So you're going to really change your paradigm on how you spend your time and what you're prepared to do and what you understand you should not be doing. Let's go to the next question now. John McEwen is asking, is there something equivalent to the goal plan for buyers to help keep them engaged? At the Super Conference, I talked about follow-up is a big hole for most realtors. I said this, that most of the buyers and sellers that you speak to, okay, as long as you're a real estate agent, are not ready to act. They're, it's not like most of the buyers that you come into contact or most of the sellers you come into contact say, hey, I'm ready to buy or sell today. It's not true. Most of the prospects are future prospects. And I said for sellers, some of the prospects are better than others. Some of the future prospects are what I call golden prospects because they're very upfront and vocal about their motivation and their timing. They're not hiding their intentions at all. So I designed my goal plan mailing system for sellers. I also said meeting with sellers too early is actually detrimental to you. So you want to continue to follow up with sellers until they're ready to sell, until they're ready to sign a listing agreement with you. With buyers, none of that's true. John's saying, is there a goal plan for buyers? No, John. A buyer, you just get them in and sign them up to a contract. You can't be too early with a buyer. If the buyer is going to be making a purchase within 1 year, just get together with them and sign them to an exclusive buyer agency agreement for 1 year. Okay, so that's why we really don't need anything like the goal plan for buyers. Now keep in mind, some of the prospects will be both buyers and sellers. Let's have a look at the next question here.
Hey, Craig, just let me just add to that. This is something that Lester actually talked about at the boot camp. Was the idea that his buyer agreement is 12 months and it renews. So even if a buyer isn't buying anything for 6 months, there's still a huge benefit to that buyer to be a VIP buyer, to hire you now, even though it's 6 months before they may make a purchase. If they're looking for property, if they're a golden prospect and they're looking at property, then receiving all the benefits of the VIP buyer service right now would be a huge benefit to them. So that's the difference. Whereas with a seller, if a seller's not selling for 6 months, you're not signing into a listing agreement today. But with a buyer, you absolutely can do that.
Well, so what I would say to buyers is, if you were my buyer, James, I'd say, well, look, I understand you're not going to be in a position to buy a home for 6 months, but why don't we take advantage of this time between now and then and educate you on what's going on in the market. So every day you're going to get updated all the hot new listings that match your criteria. So 6 months from now, when you're ready to buy, or if that happens earlier, you're going to be in a position of being an educated buyer. So yes, it's very easy to meet with the buyers and get the buyers signed to an agreement, even though they're not ready to buy. But that's not true with sellers. If a seller's got a very good reason why they're absolutely not going to list their home for 6 months, and you force the meeting today, well, you know in 6 months when they're ready to sell, they've forgotten everything you had to say. Whatever price you gave them will be incorrect, and they're probably going to meet with a couple of other realtors. What chance do you have? How much are they going to retain of what you had to say 6 months ago? That's why it absolutely works against you, and that's why we've created the gold plan for sellers. All right, the next question I don't really understand, but here it is anyway. This is from Becky. Becky's asking, when will we get help or guidance on how to market our advertisement, or do we go on our own pace and do it ourselves? Okay, Becky, not really sure what you're asking there, but every Friday, as you know, we conduct an ad clinic webinar or a marketing webinar where we look at any ads that are submitted, including yours, and we help you critique your ads. So you've got the opportunity every Friday morning to look at the best ads that are submitted, and we show you how to make the ads work even better. And yes, all of you will go at your own pace. Some of you are just faster implementers than others. Elizabeth Quick is asking, what is the verbiage for a referral when I have a worthy cause? Okay, Elizabeth, you're going to, after you get a listing contract signed or a buyer agency agreement signed, you want to spend a few minutes programming the buyer or seller for referrals. This is where you're going to talk about your worthy cause. And it does always work better if this is a cause that you really believe in. You're going to explain to the buyer or seller, now that they love you, arguably they love you the most right now because they've just signed up with you. They're either buying their biggest asset or entrusting their biggest asset with you, and they're going to run around and they're going to tell all their friends and relatives and coworkers that they're buying a house or they're selling a house. And I said it only makes sense that you plug yourself in to those natural conversations. So it's very simple. You would talk about why the cause is important to you. So Jim Buttrell, our Marine out of San Diego, will talk about wounded warriors and why that's important to him. Obviously, being in service, he can talk about that and why he believes in this cause, and that a percentage or a fixed amount from every referral that he gets, okay, will go to wounded warriors or Sick Kids Hospital or whatever cause is important to you. And I don't think you're going to have any trouble, Elizabeth, talking about this cause if it truly is important to you. And I think that works a lot better than saying, hey, if you send me a referral, I'll give you a $50 gift certificate to Starbucks. Our next question is, can you give any, this is from Verlin, can you give any suggestions on handling commission reduction issues? Okay, well, the better your presentation is, your listing presentation is, the more these objections go away. Okay, price is really only a factor in the absence of value. Okay, so the better the presentation is, meaning the more value you articulate during your listing presentation, the less objections you get. In fact, at the Super Conference, I said this: if at the end of your presentation you're faced with all kinds of objections, if you have to be an arm twister, if you're faced with a lot of resistance, it simply tells me that your presentation just isn't strong enough. So in any case, to answer your question, I would say to the seller, well, it sounds like what you pay is more important than what you're going to net in your pocket. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'd like us to focus on how we can net you more in your pocket than any of the other realtors you've spoken to. The first thing that I would share, if this was true for you, is my superior list-to-sales ratio. Okay, I would prove to the seller that on average, my listings are selling for, let's say, 2% closer to the asking price than the real estate board average. I might also show my days on the market if that was superior. I might also show my success rate, the fact that a higher percentage of people that list with me actually sell and close than the real estate board average. Now, we help you with these statistics, by the way, Verlin, so even if you don't have those stats, maybe we could leverage off of your broker stats. But there's a big difference between just selling a house and selling the house correctly, doing a great job. And that's the focus. We've got to get the focus off what they're paying you and instead get them to focus on who's going to net them more money in their pocket after all the expenses. When they're focused just on commission, what they're really saying is, we don't see the difference between you and the other realtors we've met with. That's what they're really saying. And I get that. If I was the seller and I interviewed 3 realtors and they all pretty much sounded the same and said the same things, then I too would probably just look at price, all other things being equal.
Yeah, in the absence of value, cost is the issue.
Mm-hmm. Let's look at the next question. This is from Daniel Pilson. Craig, please review Facebook and Google pay-per-click successful ads on this Friday's ad clinic. Okay, so we can do that for you, Daniel. Andrea, do you want to make a note of that? Daniel would like us to show a couple of our most successful Facebook and Google pay-per-click ads. He says this really helps us to see successful ads which are effective.
I'll make a note of that. Just as a reminder, we won't be having a marketing clinic this Friday due to Thanksgiving. But
I forgot.
That's okay.
You're right.
But in the meantime, though, you can fast forward that. There are some really good Facebook examples right on the homepage, Andrea.
Yes.
Where you can access. If you look right where under resources, where Andrea is right now, Facebook ads. There you go. You don't have to wait till Friday. The only reason these ads are up here is because they're excellent examples. Here's what you'll notice about them, by the way. They're specific. And that is definitely the key with these Facebook ads being successful, is you've got to call out to the geographical audience that you're looking to attract. If they're generic, they're never as successful as ads that are more specific.
The next question here is from Nick and Joe Hayes. The question is, we are having a lot of problems with prospects not showing up for their appointments. We're following the universal callback script and we feel the conversations are going very well. We're also sending the confirmation email within 10 minutes after booking the appointment, recapping the benefits again. Any suggestions? Well, let's see if Nick or Joe can come on live here with us. I'm not sure if they have a computer mic or they're on the telephone, but I'd like to ask them a few questions.
Nick and Joe, say hello. Your mic is open. We can hear you. Just say hello.
Hello?
Hi, is this Nick or Joe?
Hey, it's Nick. How you doing?
Hey, Nick. How you doing? So tell me what's going on here. You're booking, are these appointments with buyers or sellers?
Mostly buyers, the ones that are having to come into our office.
Okay. Are you trying to book the appointments as close to now as possible?
Yes. Yeah, we're trying to get them within 2 to 3 days, max 3 days.
Okay, well, obviously the best time is like right now. Later today would be the next best time, and then tomorrow is not as good, and so on. So have you followed up with the buyers that are not showing up to find out why they're not showing up?
Yeah, some just don't respond again. We can't get a hold of, and some of them, keep saying that they're busy and trying to put us off for next week or further on down the line in the future.
It's happening a lot, like to a high percentage of your appointments not show up?
Yeah, I would say 80% are not showing up.
Okay, so what that tells us is the offer is kind of weak. Because if the offer was really good, I mean, if the prospects really understood the benefit of meeting with you, they would meet with you. The reason they're not showing up is they really don't understand it, and therefore it's not important to them. For example, let me ask you this. What if your offer to buyers was, if you drop by my office, I'm going to give you a gold brick?
Right, yeah, they'd be there.
Right, I'm going to give you $10,000. They would be there. Everyone understands the value of a gold brick or $10,000. So let me hear your offer. Let's pretend I'm a buyer, and you've asked me all the qualifying questions, the probing questions in the universal callback script. And you like what I have to say, and I'm a buyer that you would like to meet with. Let me hear your offer.
Sure. And Craig, would you like me to email you daily updates of all the homes that match your home buying criteria? Not just from my company, but from all of the companies here in Monroe. Our list includes bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, properties that are under market value, and other good deals on homes. It's completely a free service, and you're never obligated to have to buy a home. Would that be of interest to you down the line?
Well, look, I'm already getting emails from another agent, so I think I'm okay.
Well, Craig, I can understand that, and I'm not sure what kind of emails you're getting from the other agent, but again, our list includes distressed properties, bank foreclosures, and other good deals on homes. Would you be interested in that?
Yeah, but how's that any different than what the other agents sending me, or what I can just go find online?
Well, again, ours include distressed properties, bank foreclosed homes, company-owned properties, homes that are priced under market value, other homes that we have coming on the market that are not on the market yet that we have access to. It's completely a free service, Craig, and you're never obligated to have to buy anything.
Okay.
Is that something that might help you out, that might be a little different than what you're getting now, or?
Yeah, I would like to get all the properties.
Okay, and when can we get together? Typically mornings or evenings work better for you, Craig?
How about next week? Next Monday?
Next Monday, do you have anything, closer to the time? Sorry, I messed that one up. I think.
See how a little detail like that makes a big difference. Now it's awkward.
Right. Yeah, I just drew a blank there. Sorry.
Okay, let's say the buyers that are unlikely going to show up, it's because they're not sold on the benefit. So if a buyer's not really convinced of the benefit in meeting with you, they're going to try to push that appointment off. Would you agree, as long as possible?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right? Like when the dentist calls me, I'm going to push that off as I don't want to go to the dentist. I'm going to try to delay that, prolong that as long as possible. Okay, but let's say you convince me to meet you in 3 days. Here's what can happen. First of all, do you think it's possible that the buyer might just forget?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, you've forgotten about things. In fact, you probably forgot about things you actually want to do.
Right.
Right? So for the buyer to forget about something they don't want to really do, you've forgotten things that you actually want to do over a 3-day period. So that's why time's not our friend. Now, what are you going to do to remind me to come to this appointment?
Typically, I'm going to send you an email within 10 minutes after, and then also send a text and call an hour prior to the meeting.
Do they respond to your email or text?
They will respond usually to the text, and then they'll say, oh, well, I had something come up, or I have to work, or they'll make an excuse.
Okay, hang on. You're texting them 10 minutes after the appointment is set and they're already coming up with an excuse?
No. I'll email them a confirmation 10 minutes after, and then if it's tomorrow, the appointment's tomorrow, I'll email them a half hour to an hour before our appointment. Or I'm sorry, I'll text them.
Okay, so they're actually letting you know via text or email that they're not coming in.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so don't do that.
Okay.
You're making it pretty damn easy for them not to show up, right?
Right.
Okay, I'm just saying if it's within a couple days, I never did that.
Okay.
I know I was talking to one of our members with Commissions that's using Commissions Inc. And James, I don't know if you know this, but one of the things that happens when an appointment is booked through Commissions Inc., it emails the prospect and it says something like, you know, do you want this appointment, yes or no? And they can just click on no. We don't want to make it very easy for them to say no. I think if the appointment was, you know, 3-4 days out, you might want to confirm it. But if these appointments are within a couple days, you've already emailed them a confirmation. I just wouldn't be texting them or emailing them 2 days later because you're making it really easy for them to get rid of the appointment. Okay. They don't have to call you. All they have to do is reply back to the message saying, oh, something came up. Try that and see if it helps.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Greg, you know what? I'll say, just to piggyback on that, this is something that we spent some time at the boot camp last week talking about in depth. And, you know, the common thread is this. If the prospect really doesn't understand the benefit of the appointment, stands to reason there's a good chance that they won't show up to it. And the problem is this. When the prospect voices their objection, then you have a chance to handle it. But in all of those instances where the prospect doesn't voice their objection, they don't say something like, well, you know what, I'm already getting properties from another agent, or I'm happy just going online looking for properties. If the prospect doesn't think that what you're offering them is any better than what they're doing, but they don't tell you that that's what they're thinking, then you just book the appointment. They say, yeah, and it doesn't happen. So you've really got to go back and make sure of two things. You're really explaining the difference between what you're proposing to offer them now versus what they've been doing. And number two, making damn sure that they don't feel like there's a cost or an obligation attached to this appointment. If they fear cost and obligation, the odds of them showing up, you know, diminish substantially.
You know, James, it's also not a bad idea before you hang up the phone and after you have the appointment verbally agreed to repeat the offer. So reiterate it. So, James, if we were supposed to meet tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, before you get off the phone, I'd say, so, James, just want to confirm you're going to be meeting at my office tomorrow at 7 o'clock at 1140 Stellar Drive at the RE/MAX office. And when we get together, what am I reiterating? Not just the appointment, but I'm reiterating the benefit. And when we get together, James, what we're going to do is have a detailed discussion about exactly what you're looking for. You're going to leave my office with a list of properties that match your criteria, but every day going forward, you're going to receive all the hot new listings of just the homes that match your criteria, including any bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, or distressed sales. So I look forward to meeting you tomorrow at the RE/MAX office at 7 p.m. If anything comes up, please give me a call. Look forward to seeing you then, James. Okay, next question. This is
by the way, there is something that that Lester brought up that I want to mention here. There's an app that you can get on your phone, and the app is called SlyDial. S-L-Y dial, D-I-A-L, SlyDial. Now, here's what it does. It allows you to call anybody you want to call, but instead of their phone ringing, it goes directly into their voicemail. So if you're ever going to confirm an appointment in this circumstance, if you want to test that, instead of calling the prospect so they can answer the phone and say, oh, yeah, Joe, I'm glad you called, something came up, let's postpone it. Instead of that, you're going to leave a voicemail that reiterates the benefit of the appointment. Your slide out goes right in their voicemail and says, hey, I'm looking forward to meeting with you this evening. Remember, consider all of the elements in a home that you're looking for so that we can do a great and quick job of getting you all of the very best properties and setting you up on my automated emails. Don't worry about bringing your checkbook or wallet. There's no cost associated with this or obligation to buy anything. We'll see you tonight at 7. And that goes into their voicemail box as opposed to calling them where apparently what they're saying to you is, yeah, let's postpone that. It's just something else that you can consider testing to see if you get a better result.
Okay, I think we beat that one up. Let's move on. This is a question for you, James. This is from Candace. Is the San Francisco Boot Camp only a one-day event, and
Yes.
Is this a good time for me to bring a new member of my team with me?
Sure, you can bring a new member of your team. I mean, you know, here's the thing, though. It depends on what your team member is doing. If this is an administrative person, it'd probably be a really good thing to bring them to because it's great that they understand what it is you're doing and how the systems work and what you need to prioritize your time and their time doing. However, if it's a team member like an outside sales agent, then I would probably say no, don't bring them. It's not as beneficial for them, and I'll tell you why. We're going to spend a lot of time going over lead generation, and the honest truth is your outside salespeople specialize. They don't need to know all of the different ways that you generate leads. Number one, because they don't need to know, we practice specialization. But number two, because if we detail all of the lead generation methods, some of them are going to be tempted to leave after all your hard work of recruiting them and go and do it themselves, and we don't want that. So instead what we do is throughout the year, we hold events specifically for outside sales agents and inside sales agents. My suggestion is have your inside and outside people register to go to those events that we put on throughout the year that are specifically for them. But if it's an administrative person, yes, bring them to San Francisco.
All right, we've got lots of great questions here, so let's keep moving on, James. Mark is asking, what do we do if we get a lead from one of our ads, from the expired ad rather, this expired editorial campaign, I assume, but the person's home is still listed, it's still on the market with another realtor? Well, Mark, I think it's possible for you to make an appointment the day after the listing expires. So if someone owns a home and they have it listed with another realtor, but they contact you while they're listed with the other realtor, are you ethically able to talk to them? Yes. Now, you can't run over to their house and meet with them today, but you could book an appointment for the day after it expires, which is exactly what I did. Okay, the next question is from Bertrand again. How do I get my outside sales agents to do their follow-ups? Hey, that's a great question, Bertrand. I wish I knew the answer to that. Here's the problem. You can't. Okay, I made that mistake. Many of you will make that mistake. So you'll give the leads to your outside sales agents. That's what I tried to do as well. And you all heard about my top inside sales agent. Her name was Lindy Black. And she's very, very good. So I would give her like 17 leads, and Lindy would call, 2 or 3 of them. And because she's very good, she would book an appointment with a buyer or seller, and she'd run out the door and she would go do that. And the other 13 or 14 leads that I gave her out of the 17 would not get called. You see, I realized very early in my career that the outside sales agents really don't want the leads. They want appointments. So let me repeat that again. You might want to write that down. OSAs, outside sales agents, they want appointments. They don't want leads. That's why I created an inside sales department. Okay, now, the inside sales agent to begin with should be you. Okay, it should be you. If you do not master the universal callback script, then it would be impossible for you to teach someone else how to do it. Many of you don't like that idea. You don't want to learn the script. You don't master the script. And that's why the system never works for you, because if you don't master the script and you're giving the leads to somebody else, understand that's not delegation. You're abdicating responsibility. You're not delegating responsibility for lead follow-up. This is the Achilles heel. This is the weakness that most of you have. It's not generating the leads. James and I are very confident that we can help you all generate more leads than you can handle. But at what purpose? What's the purpose of generating the leads if you yourself aren't going to roll up your sleeves and master the universal callback script and call the leads back yourself? Okay, this is a rainmaker activity. I will submit to you that you can all make more money calling the leads back, actually more money than actually going out on the appointments, and that's exactly what I did. Now, to begin with, because for many of you there's only you, the person doing the calling, you, is also doing the doing. So what's going to happen is as you sit down and you make the calls, and by the way, you should all be treating the callbacks like it's a listing appointment. You should create a perfect week. So for example, you might want to take 2 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Wednesday, 2 hours on Friday, for example, dedicated to making the callbacks, to calling the leads back. If you had a listing appointment, you would show up for that. You see, the listing appointment is treated with great reverence. You know, I'm going to show up for that. However, isn't it true that for many of you, everything and anything will get in the way of you actually making the callbacks? They're not viewed by many of you as a rainmaker activity, when in fact, the real truth is it is the most valuable thing that any of you, all of you, can spend your time on, is to actually call back the leads, set up the appointments for yourself, or set up the appointments for another one of your outside sales agents that maybe you haven't yet hired yet. But if we take a look at, for most of you, your solo agents, here's the problem. I want you to think about this. If James and I show you how to generate lots of leads, and then James and I show you how to be really, really good with the universal callback script, so obviously we hope that's all going to happen here in short order, look at what's going to happen. You're going to be calling back the leads, and because you're good with this script, you're going to be booking all these appointments. But because there's only you, now you're going to be out on all these buyer and listing appointments. Guess what? The calls aren't going to get made, are they? Because there's only you. So what will happen is you're out with all the buyers and sellers and you're listing homes, you're working with buyers, and then you realize, holy cow, I'm way behind on following up the leads. Now, you go back to following up the leads, and what you realize is many of these buyers or sellers have, because you didn't get back to them in a timely manner, they've already chose to work with another real estate agent. Okay, they've listed their house with somebody else. They're working with another real estate agent on the buy-in now. So that's the game you're going to have to play, because there's only you. You're going to have to divide your time up between calling the leads and working with the sellers and the buyers. Eventually, though, the next step is to hire an outside sales agent that could help you work with the buyers and sellers so you could spend more time on the phone booking the appointments. But many of you don't think that way. You actually believe the thing to get rid of, the thing to delegate or abdicate rather, is the phone calls. So you just abdicate it. You just hire somebody and you throw the script at them. You say, okay, go do that. But if you're not really good at the script, you could never teach someone else how to do it, and you will fail. Because all of a sudden, all these leads that we teach you to generate will appear to be bad leads, because the person calling the leads is not skilled at actually qualifying them and compelling the buyers and sellers to meet with you. Next is from next question or comment rather. This is a comment from Robert Wilson. Hey James, this is Bob here from the Thousand Oaks. The Huntington Beach boot camp was great. My confidence has increased. I held an open house yesterday for a fellow agent, and I find myself using the buyer's script with a live in-person prospect. I explain why I negotiate on their behalf versus working directly with the listing agent. As James said the other day, the listing agent has a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. Thank you, James, for explaining. Marie is asking, what is the Ted Kennedy material? It's actually Dan Kennedy material. He's a copywriter. He's a copywriter that I write with, and he helped me create some of the copy for the gold plan. Sarah Roy is asking this, is there a template for the referral certificate or a script on what to say? Yes, there is. On the coaching site, you'll see information on referrals, including a script that I use. Andrea can maybe point you to that. If you go to the file library, pretty much everything you folks are looking for, if you just type that into the file library, as Andrea will demonstrate here, it should come up. If it doesn't come up, let us know, and we'll try to make that happen for you. Okay, next question or comment is from Rachel. Craig, I'm not getting any leads from Facebook with Success Website, and I have 5 ads currently running on $10 for $10 a day in 5 areas. Should I stop or continue? Look, you guys should always stop something that's not working. Okay, this is the purpose of testing, right? We have to fail our way to success. Okay, remember I said at the Super Conference, there are no great marketers, there's only great testers. But that being said, we don't have to run these ads for weeks and weeks and weeks to establish they don't work, right? That's why we call this direct response marketing, because you should get an immediate direct response every time you run the Facebook ads or Google pay-per-click or whatever. There's no sense sitting around, days later wondering whether the Facebook ad worked or not. Obviously it didn't. Okay, so you might be kind of bummed out by that, but be happy. Even when things don't work, it does eventually lead you closer to what does. You can scratch that off the list and say, okay, we tried that. Let's move on to testing something else. This is where you really want to work with your coach and show your coach, okay, here's what I'm doing. Here's the results that I'm getting. Also, Rachel, you can upload your Facebook ads to the ad clinic every Friday, except, of course, this Friday. We're not having one. But we're happy, James and I are happy to look at your ads and critique them and help you optimize them. But anyway, the short answer to your question is no. Do not continue to do things that aren't working. Change some of the dynamics and move on.
Yeah, that's a great point, Craig, is that means change it. It doesn't mean say, okay, I tried Facebook, it doesn't work. It means the message that you're doing using Facebook isn't effective. It doesn't mean that Facebook doesn't work necessarily. It doesn't mean that that day of the week doesn't work necessarily. It just means that one of the elements of your marketing with Facebook isn't effective. So we don't need to do it that way. We need to test different approaches. My guess, because we've looked at a lot of these, is that the most successful Facebook ads are always the ones that are most specific to the geographical target audience, to the price range, to the type of property. They're the Facebook ads that tend to be most successful. So if we looked at yours, we could probably make it more specific as well. But you definitely need to change something. What Craig isn't telling you to do, he's not saying Facebook doesn't work for you, don't do it anymore. He's saying the message you're using isn't effective, let's change it.
Well, sometimes it's not even the message, James. Sometimes the message works quite well, but it's the landing page that has a problem. So this is what we're going to try to help you determine on the ad clinics every Friday is we get you to submit the ad, and then we go to your landing page. So for example, if we looked at your results and we saw that your Facebook ad actually caused 45 prospects to go to your landing page, but your landing page didn't convert any of the prospects to leads, we could make a blanket statement like, well, that ad didn't work, when in fact the ad worked very well, and the issue is the landing page, and quite often we can identify some problems with that landing page. So yes, we're very careful not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. That's a mistake a lot of our new members make, is they make blanket statements. They tried one ad on Facebook, it didn't work, so therefore all of Facebook doesn't work. Or they run one Google ad and all of Google doesn't work. Also, the other problem here is Success Website's a great place to start, to get you started, but I want all of you to understand your own marketing. Okay, who cares more about your business than you? Nobody. So that's why you want to take charge. Again, we don't want to abdicate that responsibility to anybody. Although for you newer members, Success Website's a great place to start to help you get your first Facebook and Google pay-per-click ads up and going. Wouldn't it be better if you actually understood the ins and outs of it? So you could decide what the ads, what the messages should say, and how it should all work? I think the answer clearly is yes. The next question is about Kijiji and Craigslist. I'd like help with that. Well, again, we're going to cover that not today, but on our ad clinics. Okay, our next question here is from Elizabeth. What if the prospects answered all the probing questions on the Success website? When you call, do you ask the questions anyway, even though they've already answered them? Yes, Elizabeth, you do. I want you to ask all the questions in the script, even though they may have answered the questions on the website. We want to be sure, as you say here, do we want to validate those answers? Absolutely, we do. Okay, the next question is from Ira. How many times is it appropriate to call your leads if they don't answer the phone? That's a great question, Ira. You know, I was pretty persistent, maybe more persistent than any of you. I would call 3 or 4 times a day. I would call for several days. And then I might post-date that call, maybe they're on vacation or something, for a couple days and call them back next week. But I was able to reach 65 to 70% of my prospects. Notice I didn't say 100%. There's always going to be 30% that I couldn't reach, but I sure make a good effort. Some of the techniques I would use is I would call them, and if it goes to voicemail, I'd hang up, I'd call them right back. Sometimes I'd call using *67 so they wouldn't see my name. Sometimes I would call from my cell number. I would never call from my office. I was very persistent, with prospects. This is the way I looked at it. See if you agree with this, Ira. The harder the prospect was to reach, I figured that was kind of a good thing, because if I couldn't reach them, it probably means none of my realtor competitors could reach them either. As a last resort, by the way, I'll leave a voicemail message. But nothing really good happens when you leave a voicemail message. Getting them to call you, no matter what message you leave, is very difficult. And if you can't speak to the prospect, you're just leaving them a message. But if you can't speak to the prospect, that means you can't ask the questions in the universal callback script. If you can't ask the questions in the universal callback script, that means you can't determine their motivation and timing, and you certainly can't articulate your buyer or seller offer, which means no appointment happens. Next question or comment is from Johnny Turner. It says, I want to alert you to a minor issue that I noticed with the ad generator. Well, let's have a look at this. It says the BRE requires the agent line text to be smaller than the smallest text in the ad itself. The ad generator does not perform this function properly. The agent line text is always smaller than the smallest ad in the text. Can you please have this fixed? Well, Johnny, I'd like to know who told you that. If you can send us that in writing, I'd love to see it. Usually when we hear this kind of stuff, it usually means that you heard it from somebody, but look, we definitely want you all to comply. Johnny, by the way, if that's true, you can make your type larger. But quite often when we hear, well, what you're teaching is not, we're not able to do that, and we really look into it, we usually find that that's not true. In fact, James, how many realtors have we had through the program in California? Have you ever heard anyone say that the disclaimer line, the font is not large enough?
Right.
Maybe we missed it. We've had 10,000 people in California through. Maybe we missed it. But quite often what it comes down to is, well, I heard it from my broker. I heard it from another agent. But if that's true, Johnny, here's the answer. Just make it a little bigger. But, you wouldn't want to do that unless you have to.
Well, it's like, I can't believe how many realtors think when I say, is it a requirement to include your photograph in a real estate ad? I'll get a third of of realtors will say, yes, that's a requirement. And then I'll say, what about a classified ad? When you run a line ad in the classifieds, I don't see any pictures there. And everyone kind of looks around. Oh, yeah, well, there you don't. It's like, you don't really know, do you? You don't really know what the rules and the regulations are. Where does our perception of these rules, where does it actually come from? Because we're not reading them. It's just what we think. So we really do have to be clear about that.
Well, look, thank God James and I aren't attorneys, okay? And we can't know all of the rules in all 50 states and all 10 provinces in Canada. We try our best to keep up. Maybe they've changed things. You know, maybe there's a change, but as far as I know, in every jurisdiction in the United States and in Canada, the rule is this: your name can't be bigger or more dominant than your company name. That's it. Okay, let's move on here. This is from Lewis. Could you please address the issue of our offering a free no obligation service for a buyer, but then getting them to sign an exclusive buyer agency agreement wherein they must agree to paying a commission should the seller not meet the split? Well, you don't have to do that. So what Lewis is saying is in the buyer presentation, we say we're going to do this for you and this for you and this for you and this for you, and all our services are free. That's a great place for all of you to start, and what that means is you're going to be accepting whatever is being offered to the buyer agent from the listing company. That's a great place to start. Once you become really, really good with that, Lewis, you can up the ante. You could say this. You could say, you're going to get all this stuff, and we're only going to charge you a 3% commission, which is usually paid by the seller. Okay, but you would be responsible for the difference. Or you could up the ante and even say this. It's a $495 upfront retainer fee to get started. Okay, and you will be responsible for 3% of the purchase price, if not paid for by the seller. Okay, you can slowly work into this. As you get better with the presentation, you're going to learn how you'll have the confidence really to become stronger and stronger. Just like with the seller side of things, most of our new members start off by just being happy that they've got a much higher conversion rate, even though they might not be able to defend their commission. And then the next step is not only to defend their commission, they're actually negotiating a higher fee or adding on a transaction fee. So think of this as a series of baby steps. Now, let's say that James was my buyer, and I get James, he's sitting down in front of me, and he's signing a 12-month buyer agency agreement, and I explain to James, now James, my commission is 3%, and it's often covered by the listing agent, the listing company, or the seller's paying for it, but you would be responsible for any difference, should there be a difference. Does that sound fair? Now, if James really gave me a lot of resistance, okay, I could wimp out, right? I could say, well, look at, I really like you, James, and I don't want this getting in the difference between you and I doing business. So what if we just change this clause to say, I'll accept whatever is being offered on MLS? But the idea here is if you don't ask, you don't get. The first sale that every salesperson must make is to themselves. If you don't believe you're worth it, then I know you won't be able to convince anybody else of it either. Let's go to the next point here. This is from Murray. I'm using the seller USP, sold in 60 days or I'll pay you $1,000 guaranteed, and the related landing page from Success website shows the header, but the text about a third of the way down switches to an explanation of how if the property does not sell, we'll buy it. Well, yeah, Murray, that is an issue. So we need to make sure Success website is in fact using the right landing page. Now, Murray, if you go to the ad generator let's do that actually, and let's make sure that that's not messed up on our end. Andrea, if you could go to the ad generator and you could pull up that USP that Murray's referring to. Let's have a look at the landing page example from Success website just to make sure that something didn't slip through there that's not correct, because Murray, you're absolutely right. Your guarantee has nothing to do with buying the home. So let's go to the branded version actually. You'd be using the branded version, right, Murray, if it's a USP ad. Yeah, and that's messed up. So I see that. Do you see where it's messed up there, Andrea? If you go to the second paragraph, what Success website is done, hold it, that's the wrong landing page altogether. Sorry. Andrea, can you flip back there? No, that's not the right one. I apologize. We want to go to 60 days or we'll pay you $1,000. So that's one good reason to be messed up. We clicked on the wrong one. Do you know which one we're talking about, Andrea? Right at the very top. Right there at the very top. You click on that one, please. Okay. So Murray says 60 days. So just switch that to 60 days so it looks exactly like Murray's. Okay, so that's what Murray's talking about, right? Murray, your home sold in under 60 days or I'll pay you $1,000 cash. Now, Murray says that the landing page is messed up. So click on the branded landing page at the bottom there, please. And let's see. Yes, it is messed up. So they've carried through. See, Murray, what they've done is in paragraph 2, they've carried through that copy from the actual guarantee, you know, if we don't sell it, we'll buy it. Okay, so Andrea, if you can take a copy, okay, of that that URL, and I'd like you to send that to Stephanie and to Steve, and they've got the wrong landing page here. Okay, so Murray, thanks for giving me a heads up. We'll get that fixed, but you're absolutely right. What they've done is they've changed the headline to the one that you want, but they left the rest of the copy the same. So we'll get that taken care of. Next question is from Julio. Could be Julio. Julio. If you are holding a traditional open house and showing them your cash savings buyer certificate for the $5,000 or $10,000, how do you pitch the appointment for the next day or next few days to meet with you and get the VIP agreement? Well, I think you're not just going to lean on the performance guarantee. And by the way, that is not the first place I would go with a buyer. If James was my buyer and I just met him at an open house, I'm not going to say, hey, James, if you work with me, I guarantee to save you $5,000 on any home you purchase using my services, or I'll pay you $1,000 cash. I'm only going to use that if I need to. What I'd start with is I'd say, James, I can email you daily updates of all the homes that match your criteria, including bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, and distress sales. It's a free service. You're not obligated to do anything. Would that interest you? Chances are James will say yes. I'm going to set up a meeting with James, and I don't even need to go there. Why make a guarantee unless you have to? I want you to think about this. Consider in your briefcase, or I don't know, whatever you have, I had a briefcase, that you've got all of these weapons in your briefcase. Sometimes you can win the battle with a squirt gun. You don't need a bazooka, okay? You don't need to launch an atomic bomb. So only use these performance guarantees when you need to. So if I get together with James, or I need to communicate this guarantee to get the appointment with James, then I'll use it. If I meet with James and he's willing to sign the buyer agency agreement, I'm not going to mention this. But if I meet with him and he balks at signing the agreement, he says, hey, Craig, you know, thanks, but no thanks, or I'll think about it, and I'm meeting a couple of other realtors, I might mention this performance guarantee if I actually felt I needed to. Daniel says, Craig, at the conference, Lester said he will take them to see some properties. He says it's effective. Thanks. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what Daniel means there.
Repeat that one more time, Craig. I think I know.
Daniel says, Craig, at the conference, I'm not sure if he means boot camp,
Yes,
Lester said he will take them to see some properties. He says it's effective.
Right. In other words, what Lester will do is he will actually set up appointments at the first buyer appointment to get the ball rolling. Now, obviously, if a buyer is way down the road and purchasing something, he wouldn't do that. But if they're actively looking right now, then he'll get the ball rolling immediately. And on that first appointment, after going over the buyer presentation and getting the buyer agreement signed, he'll actually book appointments to go look at properties.
Okay, Johnny's back here again. He's definitely worried that he's breaking the real estate rules here. The BRE requires full disclosure regarding all rewards. If I'm currently offering several buyer or seller USPs, what's the best way to present them and limit how many can be utilized in a single transaction? Well, let me give you an example, Johnny. In my area, okay, in Ontario, they said that the Real Estate Association said that with the Guaranteed Sale Program, I have to disclose the conditions. So this is the disclosure. Craig Proctor and the seller must agree on price and possession date. That's it. Those are my conditions. Why? Because I, Craig Proctor, would buy any home, anywhere, at the right price. So I can sense here, Johnny, you're looking at these rules and you're very afraid that you're going to get in trouble, so much so that it could paralyze you from actually doing anything. So, just be aware of this. I've seen this in the past. James, I don't know if you want to comment on this, but it's almost, I get the feeling that Johnny's looking for all the reasons why he can't do this.
Yeah, make sure it's not something else. Make sure that really there isn't something else in your mind that's really getting in the way of you wrapping your head around this. Because honestly, this isn't it. There's something else that's bothering you about this that you just can't wrap your head around, and maybe we just need to discuss it more in depth. But on the other side, I would also suggest that you don't have to do everything in order to do anything. So, Craig, if you've invented 1,000 different things that you could be doing, and I say, I really don't like that guarantee, well, then use 999 other things to choose from. You don't have to do everything. If you can't get over this thing, then don't do it right now. We can move on. That's okay. There's plenty to choose from in the toolbox.
Elizabeth says, I just want to say thank you. I'm really enjoying this session. I'm glad to be able to hear the questions that others are asking. And I appreciate your time. Well, thank you for that, Elizabeth. Larry's asking, is my bold leads issue still in the queue? Okay, Larry, can you type that in again, what your bold leads issue is? Or Andrea, maybe you can pull that up.
I can.
Okay, what's Larry's question?
He says,
bold leads.
excuse me, 1 out of 10 home valuation bold leads are coming from people not listed as owners of the house. I've even tried to make a connection to the house via been verified. Should I reach out to these people or ignore them?
I would ignore them if they don't own it. That's one of the problems is if I live next door to James or I'm his buddy at work and I know his address, I can just type in his address and find out what his house is worth. I would think if they don't own the house, you can call them if you want. I guess there's always the off chance that, I don't know, James...
they want to buy it or something.
James got hit by a truck, and this is his uncle looking to figure out what his house is worth because it's going to come up for sale. Why don't you call a few of them? Why don't you do this? Call a few of them, Larry, and if the leads aren't that good, then maybe not call them again. Andy makes a good point here. She says, well, how do you know they're not just using a fake name? All these things are possible, but I think the answer, Larry, is just call some of them. Call some of these leads that have come in where it doesn't appear that they own the house. And if you call a dozen of them and you don't get anywhere with them, then that probably tells you that's not a good use of your time. However, you might be surprised, right? That's what Andy's saying. Well, what if you call them and it really is the owner? They're just giving a fake name, or it's their uncle who takes care of their real estate business. Just call a few, and you'll be able to decide whether that's a good use of your time. Okay, Sandy Casella says, why do people waste time with us anyway in the first place? Why do people waste time? I don't know why they waste our time. Actually, oh, sorry, that's not what Sandy said.
Yeah.
Sandy, okay, sorry. Let me read that again. I apologize, Sandy. Sandy says, she doesn't understand why you people waste any time looking up that kind of info first. Just call the damn lead. I'm kind of with you there, Sandy. It takes longer probably to look up the lead to see if that person actually owns the house versus just calling the lead and finding out that they don't. So, I think that's what I did. I just called the lead.
Yep.
Just call the lead. I wasn't worried about
So
it.
We had a question earlier, Craig, and it was if I generate a seller lead and I find out that the seller is already listed, do I call them? Well, the answer is, well, when you discover that? When you're calling them.
Right.
So really, that's when you discover that.
Well,
hang on.
Ethically, you should, if you do the research and you find out that seller is listed, you probably shouldn't call them. Right? Because you already are calling someone that you know is listed with another agent.
The solution is don't do the research. You don't need to. Just call them, and then you'll discover that. If you say you're planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months, and they say, well, I sure hope so because my home's on the market, well, then that's when you've made that determination. Now, it would be unethical for you to procure their business while they're listed with another realtor, but you could certainly find out how long they've been listed and when their listing expires. They called you after all. And that's a really important distinction, Craig, is that they called you.
Yeah, you know what? Ignorance is bliss. I'm with Sandy. Just call the leads back. You guys are too worried about, well, what if it's a real estate agent that owns the house? What if they're listed? What if it's not the person that owns it? Who cares? The time it takes for you to look all that stuff up, you could just call them and let them tell you that. Hey, Johnny's back here again. He says the size of the text, he says he's copied and pasted from BRE, no less than the smallest font used in the advertisement. Okay, I'll tell you what, Johnny, you win. You've worn me down. I'll see if Adrian, our IT guy, can, I'll see if we can have some way of adjusting the font. But you could just tell the newspaper right now, you don't have to wait for Adrian, you could just tell the newspaper, say to the newspaper, wherever you're running it, could you please make sure that my disclaimer font is at least the same size as the smallest font in the copy? But I can tell you, in all the thousands of people, Johnny, have been through the program, I have never had any of our members get fined, get slapped on the wrist. I've never heard anyone say that before. But if it makes you feel better, if that is actually important, then that's what we'll do. We'll see if we can adjust that. But in the meantime, you can specify that when you send the ad to the newspaper. Just say, can you make the font on the disclaimer the same size as the smallest font in the copy? Now, is it all of the disclaimer or only part of the disclaimer that needs to be in this size of font? And everybody else?
It says it says in the it says here that the size of the license number, just
right,
the number.
That's the number. So right away we found a hole in this.
The type size of the license identification number shall be no smaller than the smallest type.
So I could have.
It doesn't say it has to be larger than the smallest type. It says it can't be any smaller than the smallest type.
Correct. We just have to, the point is, we just have to be very careful that we don't operate, based on hearsay or based on misconception. A lot of people, they perceive things that just aren't true. And so now, if this is what James is saying is true, and I have no idea, if what James is saying is true, it's not the whole disclaimer. It's just the license number. Well, who cares if the license number is a little bigger? So just make the license number a little bigger. But again, I've never had any of our California members ever come back to me, ever communicate to me that this has been a problem for them. All right, let's keep going. This is from Jerry. This is a long one. We wanted to get some feedback about doing our first marketing campaign with a limited budget. We're looking at doing door hangers, San Fernando Valley area in Los Angeles County, with your USP, your home sold at 100% of the asking price or more, or we buy it. Our question is, given the expense due to our limited budget at this time and effort, would it be advisable to wait until after the holidays to do this, given the busyness and craziness of the holidays? Would people be more inclined to throw it away during this time frame? Jerry, I could argue the opposite, right? Maybe prospects have more time to respond to your advertising. What's everyone going to be doing this weekend? Are they going to be at work, or are they going to be hanging around the house? And over the Christmas, we could argue the opposite. Everything is a test. But you see, this is what realtors think. Real estate agents think, well, after about the second week in November, well, there's no sense in doing anything. I mean, we've got Thanksgiving, we got Christmas, we've got all the holidays coming here, so therefore it's going to be slower, they think. So they justify not spending money on lead generation and not working, because what would be the purpose? We can all see how self-fulfilling that is. Of course, if you stop running any kind of lead generators, you're going to have a poor December and likely a very poor start to the new year, because your pipeline is now empty. So, as I've said before, I advertise all the time. Okay? ABA, always be advertising. Always keep your pipeline full. There may be less buyers out there, for example, but who do we know about? What do we know about any buyer that's running around calling off of sign calls and ad calls during the holidays? Maybe they're a bit motivated, right? Who would do that? So anyway, yes, and the postcard, the door hangers, by the way, just to finish this thought, Jerry, if you have limited funds, why start with the door hangers? Are there not less expensive ways for you to invest your very limited funds, small budgets on Facebook, Google pay-per-click, small little ads that you can run, classified ads and print publications? So, it's just kind of odd that you're printing the door hangers and sending the door hangers out when you say I also have limited funds. It's not that that won't work, but if you've got limited funds, we could probably start with some less expensive strategies before we do that. Okay, this is from Mike Boychuk. None of that information matters. Very valuable tip I got at a platinum breakout session from Warren Flax. Don't research your leads. This is in capital letters. Don't research your leads. Just call them. Right, so I guess, Mike, you were making that mistake, right? Oh, I better look them up and do like some FBI search on them and make sure that they really own the house and they're not real estate agents and they're not currently. Who cares? Just call them. Jordan Tanner. Jordan says, what are the differences between the gold plan and the platinum follow-up? Does one work any better? Well, why not send them all? How about a newsletter, the gold plan mailings, and the platinum follow-up? I have never, James, in 25 years of being in the real estate industry, ever had a buyer or seller call me up and say that I followed up with them too much or I serviced them too much. Never had anyone complain about that. Alex Malaya from here in Newmarket with Keller Williams says, hey folks, we're making this way too complicated. Just call the leads. Alex says, he says to his newspaper, I tell them to make the font in the disclaimer even smaller than the font in the ads. Yeah, I don't want it as big. I want that disclaimer as small as possible. Ron says, I found a way to put the disclaimer in what looks like a display ad with one of the editorial ads above. It appears like a separate ad, and the editorial looks like a story. Okay, very smart. So what Ron's saying is he just uses like a little thin hairline border, and he places a disclaimer above or below the ad, but it's not boxed in with the editorial, so he can argue, yeah, my disclaimer is there, but to the prospect's eyeballs, it doesn't look like there's any disclaimer. You see, I like that because Ron, here's his attitude. Let's focus on how we can make it work versus on all the reasons why it won't. If this program really is a situation of if you believe it works or you believe it doesn't, either way, you will be right. Whether you think this works or you think it won't work, you will be 100% proven right. So you folks need to decide what you want to focus on. Focus on making it work or concentrating on all the reasons why it won't. Gert is asking this question. You should also get the headlines to be lined up at the left to make them look like an article. Absolutely. Gordon says, I have a problem. I've been in 2 weeks and I feel like I'm getting overrun by future sellers. Well, you know, Gordon, I warned you, right? I warned all of you.
I'm really overburdened by these post-dated checks you're giving me.
Well, look, I warned all of you that if you get involved with the Craig Proctor program, if you do this right, if you show up and you implement the program, you're all going to have too much business. That's what I said. You're all going to have too much business. Now, this requires follow-up. So what Gordon's saying is, look, let's be real here. He's not complaining. He's just saying, how do I follow up with them? So we have to automate part of the follow-up, Gordon. So start off with having a newsletter. Okay, you can copy my newsletter. You can even have the newsletter paid for, the cost of the newsletter, printing and mailing it out, paid for some of your affiliates by and allowing them to advertise in it. You could use techniques like voice broadcasting, but we want to follow up with them. And you're right, the more future seller leads you have, the more difficult it is to follow up. That's why we need to automate part of the process. But there's one little part of it you can't automate, and that's you actually calling these leads every once in a while. So every time you call them, you should be asking the probing questions in the universal callback script to help you determine or reestablish the motivation and timing of the prospect. Eventually, though, Gordon, if you hang with us, guess what's going to happen? The problem of more and more leads, I promise you, will get worse and worse. At some point, because we're going to teach you how to be an expert with the universal callback script, at some point, you're going to have the ability and the skill to be able to teach what you know, teach your greatness on the telephone to someone else, to another licensed agent, and they're going to be able to help you follow up with these prospects. And then you're going to have, the next thing you'll say is, okay, Craig and James, now you helped me generate all these leads. Then you helped me follow up with all these leads. Now I got a new problem. Now I've got all these appointments. I've got all these listing appointments and buyer appointments. How do I handle that? Well, it'd be pretty easy, I would think, for you to hire other agents to help you work with the buyer appointments and the seller appointments. Watch how easy it is. Hey, James, look, it's Craig Proctor here over at RE/MAX. Hey, James, look, I got a hell of a problem here. I got all of these sellers that want to list with me and all these buyers that want to go look at properties, and honestly, I can't even work with all the sellers and buyers. Would you be open to maybe coming over here and working with me, and maybe we could split the commission or work out some kind of arrangement? See, that's easy. Once you control the leads and you understand how to book the appointments, it will be really, really, really easy for all of you to recruit or attract skilled licensed agents that want to come and work with you. The problem they have is not the skills. They don't have the leads. They don't have the business. The person that controls the leads and the appointments controls the business. Okay, we keep moving here. We're almost out of time. In fact, we're out of time here in about 2 minutes. Andy says, you know what, that's a really good problem to have. She says, Craig and James, bring it on. Gordon says, awesome. Okay, look, before we're out of time here today, Andrea, tell us what's happening this week. It's a pretty short list.
It is. We have calls up until Wednesday, or webinars, I should say. We have a public relations webinar, a platinum member webinar, and a webinar on referrals. You have already all been invited to the ones that are for your individual groups. If you have not gotten an invitation, that means you do not have a webinar for the remainder of the week.
Cool. So, James, shouldn't we wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, a happy American Thanksgiving?
We certainly should, and I would like to be the first to do that. Yes, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. We're eating turkey and watching football, of course, on Thursday, so we wouldn't want anything to interrupt that, and we'll make sure not to let it. But we certainly have much to be thankful for, Craig.
We do. We all do, and we need to remember that. We need to, every once in a while, remember that. So let's take some time to remember that. Now, 1 week today, when everybody has digested their turkey and we're back to work, 1 week today, we are going to, and James, we're going to interview Steve Raitt. Now, Steve Raitt is the founder of Success Website. So he's going to explain everything you need to know about how to make money with the Success Website. I know a lot of you have questions. A lot of you are making money with it. Some of you are confused by it. So when we got back from the San Francisco Super Conference, I called Steve and I said, hey, Steve, why don't we make this really easy? Why don't you come on Monday, November 30th, helpline, and we can take all of our online lead generation, all our internet-related questions all in one session. So you want to mark that on your calendar. That's going to be next Monday, 1 week today, November the 30th at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. here on the East Coast, and we are going to interview Steve, and he's going to share with you how to get started and how to make money with the site. And if you're having any problems with it, hopefully he can answer all those questions. So we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you, James and Andrea, for doing a great job as always. Again, happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to everybody, well, some of you later this week, and everybody next Monday.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful afternoon and a fabulous Thanksgiving. This officially ends the webinar for today.